Let's talk for a minute about a specific game series, one that I followed since my earliest ages playing video games, and one that I feel most people have just completely forgotten about at this point in time, which is a shame because it pretty much gave birth to the survival horror series as we know it today. And while Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and other games have refined it past a certain point, the origin point of survival horror came from one specific game, and that game was Alone in the Dark. Developed by Infogrames and released by Interplay in 1992, Alone in the Dark set the stage for what could be called a horror-based game in which you had to use your items and your wits to survive. Hence the creation of the genre known as today, survival horror games. However, the difference between Alone in the Dark and many games we call survival horror games now is the emphasis is less on survival and more on just killing everything in your path. That wasn't Alone in the Dark style. Alone in the Dark required you to navigate a menu to do everything, from fighting to opening and searching, closing and pushing, and every time you wanted to change up you'd have to go back to the menu and do it all over again. However, smart, selective choice making of what to do with the menu and how to activate things in game and how to work the scenarios and the puzzles was what made Alone in the Dark such a classic. More so, it had cutting-edge graphics at the time. I know the graphics now are nothing spectacular. Cutting-edge graphics, and it offered up scripted scenarios where things would happen whether you wanted them to or not, based on the game's timeline. Again, this has been another feature not quite seen yet, and the way it was done in Alone in the Dark was truly, and beyond anything else, absolutely terrifying. And nowadays, it's still as terrifying as it was then, so it stood the test of time. However, unfortunately, with success, they decided they wanted to make more Alone in the Dark games. Instead of ending it where they should have, they decided to release a sequel. Alone in the Dark 2 is basically the spiritual successor to Alone in the Dark 1. The problem is, it's not very scary. It also features way too many action-based puzzles or parts of the game, which was not an emphasis of Alone in the Dark to begin with. So while the action is nice and the bump up in terms of cinematic style of gameplay is nice, it really wasn't that good as a sequel. So after some mixed reception from critics and players alike, they decided to release yet another Alone in the Dark game. This time, instead of dusty old mansions or pirate ships or anything like that, we go to the Old West. Again, it's the same basic gameplay, the same thing we're all used to, but at this point it's not scary and it feels uninspired and insipid. This was the last game for some time that they would release under the Alone in the Dark series, basically because, as far as I know, Alone in the Dark 3 was a complete and utter flop. Of course, almost 6 years later, in 2001, they would bring it back again. This time, just title it The New Nightmare, and instead of making anything resembling Alone in the Dark in the slightest, they would turn it into a really, really bad rip-off of Resident Evil and Silent Hill combined. Insipid, boring, unintuitive, and generally just not interesting in the slightest. Anybody who's played the original Alone in the Dark, who plays Alone in the Dark The New Nightmare, is going to feel the same way I did, that they threw the entire series down the crapper at this point. And with the series being this deflated and this fallen back to nothing, it's not a surprise that Uwe Boll would decide to base a movie off of it. And I say based in the most unliteral sense of the term because it wasn't based at all on the fucking video games. It was based on his own imagination of turning 10-minute shootout sequences into music videos and horrible dialogue, acting, and direction, to the point that, honestly, Alone in the Dark was pretty much dead and buried. Or at least, that's what I thought, anyway.
Hey, you! Over here! Come give me a hand! We've got to go back up!
Now keep in mind, when I bought this game, I hadn't previously seen any reviews. I read the reviews shortly after playing the game a bit, and having played the game somewhat, I had a good feeling and understanding for what was good about it and what wasn't so great about it. However, I was nearly shocked that my eyes almost popped out of my skull when I saw that IGN had given this a 3.5. A 3.5? Are you out of your fucking minds? Even better is the millions of users on GameFAQs who fucking agree with these idiots. More so than anything else that drives me batshit insane than the spammers on this page are idiots who are like sheep, so easily led, who think because a quote-unquote professional told them a game stunk that that's the final word and that they shouldn't even take another look. Well, sorry, IGN, but RMake21 is here to once again debunk your bullshit reviews, and I'm here to show just about everybody on GameFAQs who bash this just how fucking wrong you are and just how bad you really are at gaming. To do that, let's take a look at the major problems, something I've heard so many people bitch and moan about nonstop. The driving sequences. These amazing cinematic set-piece events that occur in the game, aside from wandering around killing stuff, you know, typical survival horror fare, you get very interesting little sequences like this, and it fits the whole idea of trying to make the game more like a TV series or a made-for-DV type series, DVD series rather. And I mean, this is really not that damn difficult. More so, it's powered by some of the best music I've ever heard in a video game to date. I mean, I literally bought the soundtrack when I saw the trailers because I found out that was the music in the damn game itself. But I mean, stuff's exploding, and yeah, you'll see the occasional pop-up of something like falling, like some geometry in the level. But, where are these invisible barriers you supposedly hit? Oh, look at that, I almost fell off. Look, the game actually allowed me to steer my car onto there. So where's the broken car controls I keep hearing so much about? Could it be that maybe nobody knows what the fuck they're actually doing and how to steer a freaking car? No, it's not Grand Theft Auto 4, nor does it claim to be, but Jesus Christ, this shit ain't that hard. And whoops, I fucked up. That's the end, right? No. Keep driving. You assholes probably try to continue to accelerate over the fucking hump, even though you realize you're not going anywhere because the fucking ground is higher than the car is. Even better is like if you crash and fuck up, the thing will get closer behind you, and it makes it even more suspenseful and more dramatic. I'll see if I can show you that. In the meantime, let me just try to drive up. I fucked up again. Hopefully that thing will catch up like I was saying. Helicopters exploding. Here we go, he caught up. Doomsday, Armageddon, right? No. As long as you keep your shit in check and you manage to drive through this sequence, you'll have no problem. Let me tell you something. The first time I did this, I had just as many issues as everyone else. You know what my problem was? My problem was I wasn't fucking driving. I thought this was Gran Turismo or Grand Theft Auto with magical car handling abilities that would allow me to not fly off the fucking road and drive at 85 miles per hour keeping a straight peg. No, it's not going to be like that. The whole fucking world around you is collapsing and being destroyed. You don't drive straight. You drive like a fucking lunatic to get to the end. As this sequence here will describe. Now, people have told me non-stop that they can't even get past this part. The ground disappears, they fall through imaginary holes. You know what, honestly? And I'll wait for this to end. Honestly, not one of you who reviewed this game badly knows how to fucking play video games. This is one of the most cinematic sequences ever seen in a video game, and it's a disgrace that this game should be getting a 3.5. It's a disgrace that it should get any lower than a 7.5 when it manages to pull a sequence like this off so goddamn well. You only suck at it if you suck at gaming. End of story. I did that in one fucking shot. And that's the third time I'm doing it, grand total. If anyone's seen the highly unprofessional video review that GameSpot put out for this game, you know, the one where they basically scraped the bottom of the barrel to find somebody to do a video review of it in the first place, they would know that one of the main gripes were controls. They were too complex, and the fact that blinking was unexpected, and the guy said, well, will I be blinking the entire game? Am I going to be doing this every 5 seconds? No, asshole, you're going to do it a couple of times in key points in the game, such as now, when you're waking up for the first time after who knows how long, not to spoil the game for everybody who wants to actually play it. But this is an idea of how the game opens. It's very cinematic, they don't give you any kind of hints as to what's going on, and let's watch the sequence for a sec here. Of course you're going to have to blink. You just woke up and a light was just shining in your face. Everybody, right now, close your eyes for like 20 minutes and then open them and have a flashlight shined in them. You're going to blur just as badly. See, this problem is not the game's problem. This is the problem with game reviewers and people not adapting to the fact that next gen is not going to be used just for fancy fucking graphics and light effects. It's going to be used for everything sooner or later. And this is not the first game where I've seen this done, but this is the best I've ever seen it done. Now, instead of copping out like so many other developers would have, the developers of this game gave you the whole sequence without a single break. Your vision is blurring, you have to blink to keep check of whatever's in front of you, and now you're going to be led by gunpoint from the head into a series of hallways and stairwells of sorts, and you're going to have to navigate it. Hopefully you paid attention to how the fuck to play the game with the big-ass prompt that says, you know, push in this stick to blink. Because he will shoot you in the back if you take more than 4 to 5 seconds to move your ass. And you can optionally hang around and try to risk factor it to hear what they're talking about in the hallway over there. But you really can't stay too long, so you get just enough in there.
Let me open it for you.
So he leads you along your trail, and basically you're just following what the developers have created at this point. It's very linear, there's no problems, but I've heard people died left and right in this sequence. God almighty, what's the matter? You can't walk up a fucking stairwell? I mean, watch this. Does this look that complex to you? All you do is navigate 3 turns, go up the stairwell, and then the game kicks into cinematic overture. I mean, was that so fucking hard to do? I've heard nothing but complaints about this game left and right on sequences like these that are so friggin' easy to do. It's a joke. More so, the fact that they're not forgiving and they have one linear path allows the developers to cinematically direct this bitch instead of doing it like, well, maybe a cutscene will start or maybe it won't. I've seen too many examples of games where cutscenes will play only on specific marks. In this game, it happens at specific key intervals for a reason, so that the program doesn't go haywire like it did in many other games where potential was high, but the risk factor was very high, and execution, well, let's just say it was flawed. More so, this lighting effect looks fantastic, and you will see all sorts of crazy shit when it occurs in the game, because what happens is you'll see stuff, you might see something that isn't there, and the developers are throwing in a lot of little secrets and things to look for in the game, aside from, you know, the main gameplay you're going to get used to. But that's it. You won't have to deal with that blurring of vision anymore unless you stare at a light too long in this game, and I mean long, like 10 minutes, or the enemy shoots something in your face. And that doesn't happen too often. It only happens when you're really far away and you're trying to use range attacks way too much. But no, we just went from gameplay to cinematic instantaneously, and the transition is fucking flawless. It works great, and the camera is doing its job fantastically. Now, I want to hold on for a second because I want to show you something. The only real gripe you can have with the controls of this game is these fixed position third-person angles they use. What you realize, however, is the developers were smart enough to design it so that even if you did kind of walk off a ledge or something by mistake or walked a little bit too far to the right, you'd still hang on for dear life, so it's not like you're going to die instantaneously. And again, we go back to cutscene. You go from game to cutscene in the show, or I should say the game rather, but the game is more like a TV series that spans multiple episodes, and the whole intro I just did with the last time on Alone in the Dark is taken directly from the game. Allow me to show you what cinematic overture really means in a video game versus what people think it means. So, like I was saying just previously, this game is structured like a TV series or like a made-for-DVD style series with menus and everything. Every time you get to a specific point in each episode, the episode will end, but not before it gives you a nice cinematic touch and ends on kind of what could be considered a cliffhanger or a specialty note, so to speak. Such as this one right here.
What have you done to her?
She's one of my hosts now, as you once were. You, my most perfect puppet.
So then the game asks you if you want to overwrite your progress. I obviously don't because I'm farther in the game than this. And you get the credits, and basically you can either continue from that point on or quit. If you quit, expect to see this, and let's just use the episode index. And they said the interface to this game sucked. I don't think so, IGN. This is stylish as hell, and it works great. Oh, and I won't talk. I don't want to ruin this. Just watch this and enjoy.
Previously on Alone in the Dark.
Those cracks! They came out of his body like they were alive! Get a grip, Hammett! The path of light's finally within our reach.
Edward.
Who said you could talk?
Mr. Scarf, take the rag doll up to the roof and kill him.
Consider it done.
My God. Who the hell am I? Daddy went through a lot of trouble to get you and that stone together, Theo. You'll be our light bringer.
What the fuck is that noise? Leave me, Edward! Save yourself!
Have you seen the walls? They're alive, like in nightmares. They open up and swallow you. I swear I saw it.
Anna, it's Jack.
Who are you?
She's one of my hosts now, as you once were.
Now, was that not fucking awesome for a video game to throw that at you every time you continue from where you last left off? Every time you continue from your previous save or you load up an episode, it'll do the previously on Alone in the Dark, which you can in fact skip, unlike certain reviewers who claim you can't skip that and you have to watch it every single time. More bullshit from the fodder. Anyway, let's move on to the next segment. So, just as every episode ends, new episodes begin and they have like an opening bit, such as this one. And I'm not going to talk because there's one line here that I love when Carnby lets it out.
Still have the keys to your mind. Now give me my stone.
Now, I love Edward Carnby. A lot of people bitched and moaned about his voice acting, but you know what? For me, it's rock solid and spot on to a guy who really doesn't give a shit and can't remember anything. And that is no more excelled by this one sequence coming up. Here, have a look.
I don't have your stone, and fuck you anyway.
Now, a lot of reviewers have been, let's see, eager to say that this game has some of the worst voice acting ever heard in the history of gaming. I don't agree. They also claim that the cursing is petty, stupid, and unnecessary, even though, you know, the whole goddamn world is falling apart and you just woke up with amnesia and you can't remember a goddamn thing and you got these bitches chasing you around. Now, do I agree with that? Fuck no. The voice acting fits fine. Don't listen to those idiot reviewers, and once again, they are completely debunked because I'm sorry. Telling a demon to go fuck themselves is so unexpected in terms of survival horror gaming that it just worked fantastically. Alright, now here's something I want to gripe a little bit about. The melee combat system is interesting. You have to actually use the analog, push it left and push it right to swing left and right, up and down to swing up and down. This is fine and everything when there's one enemy on screen, but when you have to lock on to multiple enemies or keep swapping between, it's a pain in the ass. Also, picking up different objects when they're really close together is damn near impossible. Watch how I continue to pick up the frying pan even though I want to pick up the TV or the, ooh, ninja sword. Check it out, katana right on the floor. And of course he picks up the frying pan again. So yes, this is a legitimate issue with the game. Is it a game killer? No. What kills the game, however, is that the AIs are relentless. They will not give you 5 seconds to think. Maybe this is better this way, but I would kind of hope that they would hold back just a little bit. However, if they did hold back, the tension in the game would be gone, and the whole suspense level of having to kill everything with fire, well, the major enemies anyway, there are smaller enemies you can kill without fire. But the major enemies have to be killed with fire, and this adds a lot of tension to the game, because if you don't have an object that you set on fire, or you don't have some kind of flame-based weapon or anything to use, you're pretty much fucked until you find one. And that leads you to either make stuff, or use your brain and come up with different ways to do things. Now, I'll cover that in the next part of this review, but for now, let me just say this. While it might seem annoying at first, it adds to the tension and suspense of the game, and watching these fuckers burst into flames after you suffered trying to kill them normally, that's just really damn rewarding in its own sense. I'm pretty sure everybody remembers me talking about how cinematic this game was. Well, it's no more expressed than in sequences like this, where right after that elevator hits the ground, you're officially playing in-game. You don't even have to pull up on the ledge. You can hang there all day if you want. And while a lot of people complain about the third-person perspective in this game, it really isn't all that bad. And as you can see right here, it's functional, works just fine. There are points where it's going to be a pain in the ass, I'm not going to lie to you, but in general, you won't have too many issues with it. And not to say anything, but sequences like this are just damned cool and not expected from a survival horror game for one thing, or any video game for that much. I expect to see this kind of stuff in like Tomb Raider style games, not a horror-based game. So it's a nice little surprise. And again, the controls are being explained to you as you play, so it's not like you can get lost, and they flash big time like that if it's important and something you've got to pay attention to. Now, you could actually hit the fan and survive, too. My friend proved this to me. I thought if you touched it, you were instantly dead, but apparently not. But see all these things that are going on right now? These are partially scripted and partially done in real time, so it adds a nice little variety to the gameplay. But this is no more expressed than when you get down a little bit further. And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. Let me just get to this one point to show you just how cool the scripted sequences are in this game. See, when all hell is breaking loose like that, you don't expect a game to actually be able to maintain what it's doing. And now we get to the first puzzle in the entire game as far as I'm concerned, aside from the whole blink and walk up a stairwell that people found so fucking complex and difficult. It should be very obvious what you need to do here, and if you don't do it in a certain amount of time, the game will actually prompt you on what to do. So it's not like it's expecting you to know how to play every single part exactly, and for people who don't quite get it at first, it will explain in depth how to do things later on. But basically, all you gotta do is force that wire over the ledge over there, which takes a few seconds, I'll admit. It's a little tricky, you have to balance your body weight against the thing, but it's entirely possible to do it, as you're about to see here. And again, this is another part people keep claiming is impossible, broken, you can't beat, blah blah fucking blah. And I just want to show that it's not impossible to beat and that it's very possible to get past this point. That's all you need to do. Was that so fucking difficult? So after all is said and done, we swing into this platform and we're introduced to more third-person gameplay, but also now we realize we could switch on the fly if we hit the Y button. Yes, from first-person to third-person can be changed seamlessly, and you could even do that while you're climbing the ropes if you want. That's something most people don't even realize. You also may have noticed the fire. One of the best parts of this game. It spreads realistically, it looks fantastic, and it could both be either your greatest ally or your greatest enemy in this game. However, I want to once again point out something and show you that this game is actually trying to instruct you on how to play it and what to do in certain scenarios. And I also want to show you something. A lot of people told me that if they stand on top of this table and try to cross through here, they fall through the floor every time. Well, I don't see that happening, so another rumor and bullshit lie debunked. Anyway, all you gotta do is move the table out of the way and the game will proceed. Very simple, and if you get stuck on this, seriously, you shouldn't be gaming in the first place. Remember what I said about fire? Well, here's a good example of how well it spreads and how well you have to be in order to put it out and keep progressing in the game, otherwise you're completely screwed. Now I want to point one thing out. Very unrealistically, the fire extinguisher never seems to run out of fluid. Now in a game where they're trying to push some realism factor, this isn't very realistic. Also note the minor problem going on here where I can't really put the fire out because it's on a certain angle, and now this doesn't happen all the times, but this is a legitimate glitch in the game. But again, it's not a game-killing glitch. All you gotta do is wait for the boards to come down and then put them out. Nothing complex, nothing that bad. Do it and move the hell on. Again, another problem that people bitched and moaned about. It takes 5 seconds to overcome. And this fire putting out stuff might seem a bit pedantic and stupid, but believe me, you don't do it all that much in this game, and you'll only be doing it a lot if you completely fuck up and set stuff on fire for fun, or if you're a pyromaniac. Now I want to point out yet another thing people have been complaining about. They say the jumping in this game is completely flawed and broken. I've heard numerous complaints about this sequence specifically, not being able to get over it, and not being told that holding A is how you run in this game. You don't need to run. Did I just run to jump that? No, I did not. Once again, note the game telling us how to do stuff. The game's centering on objects to make sure we can get past certain points. They give you everything in the world with this game, and if you can't do certain sequences, then I'm sorry, you're just not paying attention or you're just plain stupid in general. Now I'm sure you saw that quick flash of the inventory right there. I'll explain that in a few moments. Let's just look at this. Realistically based, I don't have a key, and I can't break it open because I don't have anything to use. I guess you could use your fist, but you'd probably be bleeding from the knuckles. So what do? You blast the locking mechanism right off the goddamn door, and guess what? It worked! There's consistent complaints about the realism factor here, but I like stuff like that. It adds to it. And watch the sequence very closely. It shows you a major thing, and something that even I had missed originally, but if you want to kill the fissures, all you have to do is set them on fire. So if you want to kill these fuckers, burn them! However, there's one bit in this game that gets my goat every single time. For a game toting realism and damage factors unlike most games I've seen, why the fuck is this possible? Now, I understand they didn't want to kill off players 5 seconds after the title sequence showed up, but that was just stupid. Plus, the fact that you have to grab that thing 5 seconds into the fucking opening of the game is ridiculous, and nobody's going to really be able to do it. But yeah, you're looking at the major set piece, the one that's been shown in every single trailer that was part of the dev process, and one of those big-ass scenes that everybody's watched a million times, either in the trailers or otherwise seen screenshots of. It's the most touted sequence of the entire game, and the one that comes right before that cab chase sequence I already showed you. It's a highly cinematic sequence, very scripted, full of great surprises, such as this one coming up right now. This scene has a great sense of vertigo-inducing terror, and, frankly, some really good oh shit moments as well. However, one of the coolest features this game has is a little system, kind of like a DVD chapter jump type thing going for it, where, let's say you get stuck or you can't beat a part, you're not doomed. You can go to this menu here and you could jump backwards and forwards throughout the entirety of the game. Just keep in mind, by doing this, you negate any items you currently had on you, but you don't lose them if you've got a save file later on in the game. And also, you get no achievement point for completing the episode in its entirety. Me personally, I have no problems with that, because if you have to do this and you can't actually beat the level, then you don't deserve a fucking achievement. But if you want to replay certain segments of the game without playing other ones, that's a fantastic thing to have, and more developers should look into having a system like this. However, remember when I said that fire can be both your greatest foe or your greatest ally? Here's why it could be your greatest foe. Some objects, depending on the distance you are from them, will not fucking light up, and when you need them to light up, when you need fire, you'll wind up killing yourself sometimes trying to ignite them. Now that's bullshit, and that's a major problem, one of the main flaws I have with this game. Ignition range. However, I can't be too pissed off about it because honestly, the chapter starts for each point in this game are so close to each other that if you should die, you're really not redoing too much all over again. So now I've got a longer object and let's see if this works better. It certainly should, or perhaps I should have just used my brain and used the more obvious opening to light something on fire, but of course this is not working either. Or so I think. Oh, look, it worked, finally. Thank fucking God! Oh, and I want to point something out. If third-person navigation was so impossible, then how the fuck am I managing to do this segment? It's not as bad as people claim. Yeah, it's a little stilted. It's not the tank controls of Resident Evil, though, and thank God for that. But you will make the occasional stupid mistake or error based on the controls. They're not 100% perfect. But they're not the worst I've ever seen either. See, you'll do stupid shit like this, and you'll have to work your way back up. It's not as hard as you think, however. Pay attention very closely to how the developers left you an opening to get back to where you were in 5 seconds. Just climb this little wire here. As soon as I get up there, come on, Carnby, move your ass. And poof! You're back to square one. So light another object and do it, or just run across normally. You know which direction you have to take now. Don't you? Are you paying attention? I certainly hope so. One thing I'd like to point out, however, is do not use the flashlight like this in third person. Simply use it in first person, or don't bother at all. Because trying to hit anything in the dark with a flashlight like this is like fucking impossible, and I can only do it because I've gotten so good at this game I've actually mastered it to some degree. Seriously, don't fucking do it. You'll look like an idiot. Another thing to keep in mind, don't pick up items in first person. Do it in third person if you can. First person is only for shells because trying to get stuff off the floor in first person is damn near fucking impossible thanks to the stupid system when items are too close, the game not registering which one you actually want to fucking pick up. And that's if the game even registers that there's an item there in the first place. In third person it will, in first person half the time it will not. Second major flaw in this game. Final flaw. The A button does too much stuff. It turns on and off your flashlight. It makes you run. It makes you pick up items. So God forbid you're holding the flashlight and you want to pick up an item. Oops, now you're in the fucking dark. It's ridiculous and a clusterfuck to try to work that A button sometimes, and it really, really hampers the gameplay at times. Aside from that, there are no other major gameplay flaws. Anything you find is personal, and therefore, none of my fucking concern.